Everyone at the reunion thought Claire Bennett was the one who had fallen behind. They saw a single mother, an old dress, and a life that did not match their expectations. But they did not know that the most successful person in the room was there because of something Claire did 10 years earlier. I almost did not recognize you, Claire. I guess 10 years can be harder on some people than others. Vanessa Hart smiled as if the insult had been wrapped in silk, and the women around her laughed just loudly enough for Claire Bennett to hear every note of it. Claire stood beneath the gold lights of the Riverside Grand Ballroom with one hand around a glass of sparkling water and the other resting against the strap of a purse she had owned since her son started kindergarten. Around her, nearly 200 graduates from Westbridge High School celebrated their 10-year reunion beneath hanging lights, white floral arrangements, and a banner printed with the words Class of 2016. Claire had considered turning around the moment she reached the hotel entrance. She was 28 now, a single mother working 2 jobs, wearing a navy dress she had found on clearance for $39 and shoes she had polished twice because replacing them was not in this month's budget. Most of her former classmates seemed to have arrived carrying evidence of the lives they wanted everyone to notice. Designer watches, new wedding rings, photographs of renovated homes, stories about promotions delivered with carefully casual smiles. Claire had brought nothing except herself. Still working at that medical office? Vanessa asked. During the week, Claire replied. I also do bookkeeping from home. Busy. Vanessa lifted her champagne glass. I suppose you have to be, with a child and everything. The words sounded sympathetic. Her eyes did not. Tyler Grant, once captain of the basketball team and now apparently a successful real estate developer, stepped closer. Your son is what, 6? 7? And his father? Claire felt her shoulders tighten. Not involved. Vanessa exchanged a glance with another woman. Small, quick, deliberate. Claire knew that look. She had seen versions of it at school pickup, apartment leasing offices, and family dinners. It was the expression people wore when they believed they had just found the explanation for everything difficult in another person's life. That must be exhausting, Vanessa said. Claire smiled politely. Sometimes. You always had so much potential, Tyler added, as though delivering a compliment at a funeral. Remember? Teachers thought you would end up running some huge company. A few people laughed. Claire looked toward the stage instead. A reserved table near the front held a gold card reading Guest of Honor. The chair remained empty. Everyone had been talking about the mystery guest for weeks. Rumors said it was a successful entrepreneur who had graduated from Westbridge years earlier, someone whose technology company now supported education programs and scholarships throughout the state. Vanessa had already told 3 people that she personally knew him through a charity board. Claire had stopped listening after the second version of the story. Well, Vanessa continued, life does not exactly follow the yearbook predictions, does it? Claire thought of her son, Noah, asleep at her mother's apartment 20 minutes away. She thought of packing his lunch at 6 that morning, working until 5, changing into this dress in a gas station restroom because she had not had time to go home, and almost skipping dinner so she could leave money for Noah's field trip on Monday. She could have explained all of that. She could have defended the life these people were quietly measuring. Instead, she took another sip of water. No, Claire said. It does not. Tyler smiled. At least you made it. Before Claire could answer, the ballroom doors opened. Conversations near the entrance faded first, then spread into silence across the room. Several hotel managers straightened immediately. Vanessa's confident smile disappeared. A tall man in a dark charcoal suit stepped inside beside Principal Harris, and half the room seemed to recognize him at once. Claire did too, not because she had seen him on television or in business magazines. Because 10 years earlier, when almost everyone else had forgotten she existed, Ethan Cole had been the one classmate who never treated kindness like it required an audience. Claire's first instinct was to look away, not because she was ashamed of knowing Ethan, but because seeing him brought back memories she had spent years trying to bury. Around her, the ballroom seemed to wake all at once. People straightened jackets, smoothed dresses, and whispered his name with the excitement reserved for someone whose success had become public property. Ethan Cole had founded Cole Meridian Technologies while he was still in college, and the company had grown from a small software startup into a successful technology company with a nationwide presence. Claire knew only fragments of that story. She had seen his photograph once on the cover of a business magazine at the medical office where she worked, then deliberately turned the magazine face down before a coworker could notice her staring. Now he stood less than 40 feet away, 28 years old, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked expensive without trying to prove it, listening as Principal Harris introduced him to members of the reunion committee. Vanessa's heart moved first. Claire should have expected that. Ethan, finally. I was just telling everyone about the charity board connection. Ethan shook her hand politely. Good to see you, Vanessa. Nothing in his voice suggested the closeness she had implied. Claire almost smiled. 10 years had changed many things. Vanessa's ability to turn a passing connection into a personal friendship was apparently not one of them. Tyler joined them next, followed by several classmates who had barely mentioned Ethan's name when they were 17. Back then, he had been the quiet scholarship student who worked evenings at his uncle's hardware store and brought the same brown paper lunch bag to school every day. He had not been unpopular exactly. He had simply been easy for people like Vanessa to overlook. Claire remembered him differently. She remembered sophomore year, when her father lost his job and Claire started skipping lunch because there was not always enough grocery money at home. Ethan noticed without asking questions. The next day, his paper bag contained 2 sandwiches. My uncle made too much, he had said. Claire knew he was lying. She also knew he had chosen a lie that protected her dignity. Years later, when Claire found herself counting crackers into Noah's lunchbox so there would be enough for the rest of the week, she still remembered that kindness. Mommy, why do you always pack extra? Noah had once asked. Because somebody might forget theirs, she told him. Ethan had taught her that generosity did not need witnesses. The memory faded when Vanessa's laugh rose across the ballroom. Claire looked down at her shoes. She had spent the entire day moving from one responsibility to another. At 6 that morning, she had packed Noah's lunch and searched for his missing library book. By 7:30, she was answering phones at the medical office. At 5:15, she changed clothes in a gas station restroom on the way to the reunion. She had nearly canceled twice. Her mother had finally told her, "You are allowed to have one evening that is not about bills." Claire had come because part of her wanted proof that she was still more than schedules, rent, and the label single mother attached to her name. Instead, within 20 minutes, classmates had turned her life into a cautionary tale. Across the room, Ethan finished speaking with Principal Harris. His gaze moved casually over the crowd. Then it stopped. On her. Claire forgot to breathe. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Recognition crossed his face slowly, followed by something warmer. Vanessa was still speaking beside him when Ethan stepped away from her without answering. He walked past the reunion committee, past Tyler, past people waiting to introduce themselves, and came directly toward Claire. "Claire Bennett," he said when he reached her. His smile was exactly as she remembered it. "I was hoping you would be here." Claire stared at Ethan for half a second longer than politeness allowed. "You were?" she asked. "Of course." His answer came so easily that she almost forgot the room around them. Then Vanessa appeared at Ethan's shoulder, carrying 2 champagne glasses and a smile that looked slightly too practiced. "There you are. We were about to introduce you to some people from the alumni committee." Ethan glanced at the glasses. "I am good, thank you." Vanessa's eyes moved toward Claire. "Ethan and Claire knew each other back when we were all struggling teenagers." Claire heard the emphasis. Back when, as if whatever connection they had belonged safely in a less impressive decade. Ethan did not seem to notice the insult, or perhaps he noticed and chose not to reward it. "Claire helped me pass chemistry," he said. "That is not how I remember it," Claire replied. "You passed chemistry. I stopped you from setting your notebook on fire with the lab burner." Ethan laughed. "That counts as academic support." The sound loosened something in Claire's chest. For a few seconds, she was 17 again, sitting beside him in the library after school while rain tapped against the windows. Then Tyler joined them. "So what are you doing these days, Claire?" The question sounded casual, but she had already answered it earlier. Claire knew why he was asking again. Ethan was listening now. "I work at a medical office," she said, "and I do bookkeeping from home." Tyler nodded slowly. "Right. Still figuring out the long-term plan." Claire felt heat rise along her neck. Before she could answer, Vanessa smiled toward Ethan. Claire had big dreams in high school. Remember? Business school, maybe her own company. "I remember," Ethan said. Claire tightened her fingers around her water glass. "Plans change." Vanessa tilted her head. "Especially after children." Claire looked directly at her. Sometimes. It must be difficult doing everything alone, Vanessa continued. I cannot imagine trying to build a career without a husband helping. There it was. Soft enough to deny. Sharp enough to land. Several people nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. Claire thought of Noah sleeping at her mother's apartment. Of the permission slip she had signed that morning while pouring cereal. Of working through lunch because an extra hour meant another $20 toward rent. She could explain herself. She could list every bill she paid, every school conference she attended, every fever she sat through at 2 in the morning. But suddenly she was tired of presenting evidence of her worth to people who had already decided the verdict. It is difficult, Claire said. Vanessa seemed almost pleased by the admission. Then Claire added, but difficult is not the same as unsuccessful. Ethan's gaze shifted toward her, quiet approval visible in his expression. Tyler cleared his throat. Nobody said you were unsuccessful. Claire smiled. Good. An event coordinator stepped onto the stage and tapped the microphone. The ballroom gradually quieted. Before dinner, we would like to recognize someone whose work has transformed opportunities for students throughout this state. Vanessa straightened immediately. This is Ethan, she whispered to the group, as if she had personally arranged the moment. The coordinator continued. Our guest has funded technology labs, scholarship programs, and emergency grants for working parents returning to school. Claire looked toward the stage. Working parents. Something about the phrase caught her attention. And this year, the coordinator said, and this year, the foundation is launching the Westbridge Opportunity Foundation's Working Parent Opportunity Scholarship, a program created to support working parents returning to college or professional certification programs, with additional emergency assistance for those facing temporary financial struggles. A murmur moved through the room. Ethan did not look toward the stage. He looked at Claire. Vanessa noticed. So did Tyler. Claire's heart began to beat faster. Ethan, she whispered, what did you do? His expression softened. Something I should have done years ago. The event coordinator smiled toward Ethan and extended one hand toward the stage. Mr. Cole, would you join us? Applause filled the ballroom, but Ethan did not move immediately. He kept his eyes on Claire for another second, as if silently asking her not to disappear before he returned. Then he walked toward the stage. Claire remained beside Vanessa and Tyler, suddenly aware of every person turning to follow him. Under the warm lights, Ethan accepted the microphone from Principal Harris and waited for the applause to fade. Thank you, he began. I was told tonight was supposed to be about where we ended up 10 years later. A few people laughed softly. That is an interesting way to measure a life. Job titles, houses, companies. The number printed beside your name in a business magazine. Vanessa straightened, smiling again now that several phones were pointed toward the stage. Ethan continued. But most of the things that changed my life happened before I had any of those. Claire felt something tighten in her chest. Ethan glanced toward her side of the ballroom. There was a time when my uncle's hardware store was barely surviving. I worked there after school, sometimes until closing. College felt impossible. Even finishing senior year felt less important than helping keep the lights on at home. Claire remembered. Ethan arriving late to study hall with sawdust still clinging to his jacket. Ethan falling asleep over chemistry worksheets. Ethan pretending everything was fine because he hated being treated like someone needed saving. One afternoon, Ethan said, I told someone I was thinking about skipping a state scholarship interview because I had a shift at the store. Claire's fingers tightened around her glass. The memory returned so clearly that the ballroom disappeared for a moment. She had been standing beside his locker when he told her. She had looked at him as though he had announced something ridiculous. You are going, she had said. My uncle needs me. Your uncle needs you to have a future too. Ethan had shaken his head. The bus fare to the interview site was $28 round trip, and he did not have it. The next morning, Claire handed him an envelope containing $30 she had earned tutoring middle school students. She called it a loan because she knew he would refuse charity. Ethan had paid her back months later. Claire had almost forgotten. That person gave me $30, Ethan told the ballroom. Not because she had money to spare. She did not. She gave it to me because she believed a temporary problem should not decide the rest of my life. Vanessa's smile faded. Tyler looked toward Claire. Several others followed his gaze. Ethan continued. I went to that interview. I received the scholarship. It paid for my first year of college. Claire lowered her eyes. overwhelmed by the weight he had placed on an act that had once seemed so small. Years later, when we created our education foundation, I kept thinking about that envelope. Not the amount, the dignity behind it. Ethan looked directly at Claire now. She never made me feel poor. She never made me feel behind. She simply acted like my future was worth $30 and a bus ride. The room had gone completely quiet. Vanessa whispered, "Claire gave you the money?" Ethan heard her. "Claire Bennett gave me something more useful than money. She gave me a reason not to quit." Claire felt every gaze in the ballroom shift toward her, but this attention felt different from the judgment she had endured earlier. She wanted to disappear anyway. Ethan seemed to understand. The new scholarship program will provide emergency grants for working parents and students facing temporary financial struggles, he said. Because sometimes the difference between giving up and continuing is not a fortune. Sometimes it is one person refusing to let embarrassment decide your future. Applause began slowly, then grew. Claire stood frozen. Vanessa stared at her, as though trying to reconcile the woman in the $39 dress with the person Ethan Cole had just honored in front of everyone. Ethan handed the microphone back to Principal Harris and stepped down from the stage. This time, no one rushed to intercept him. He walked directly toward Claire again. "You remembered that?" she asked when he reached her. Ethan smiled. "Claire, I built an entire program because I never forgot it." The applause continued longer than Claire knew what to do with. She could feel heat rising into her face as people who had barely looked at her 20 minutes earlier now turned with expressions that ranged from surprise to admiration. Vanessa was the first to recover. "That is incredible," she said, suddenly touching Claire's arm as if they had always been close. "You never told us any of that." Claire looked at her hand, then gently stepped back. Nobody asked. The answer was quiet, but it landed. Tyler cleared his throat and gave an awkward smile. $30 turning into all of this. That is kind of unbelievable. Ethan shook his head. The $30 did not create the company. He looked at Claire. What mattered was that someone who had very little still noticed when somebody else needed help. Vanessa laughed nervously. Well, Claire was always sweet. Claire almost did not recognize the version of herself suddenly being offered back to the room. 10 minutes earlier, she had been the woman whose life had not followed the yearbook predictions. Now the same people were searching for ways to connect themselves to Ethan's story. "Claire, you should come sit with us," Vanessa said. "We have room at the front table." Claire glanced toward the table where Vanessa had been sitting earlier. She remembered walking past it when she arrived and seeing every chair carefully claimed with purses and jackets. "I am fine where I am." Vanessa's smile tightened. "I was only trying to include you." "I know." Claire did not sound angry. That somehow made Vanessa look more uncomfortable. Ethan watched the exchange without stepping in. Claire appreciated that. She did not need him to punish anyone on her behalf. She had spent enough of her life being discussed as though she were not standing in the room. Dinner service began, and the crowd slowly returned to their tables. Ethan's reserved seat was directly beside Principal Harris near the stage, but he paused before leaving Claire. "Can we talk after dinner?" he asked. Claire looked toward the clock on the ballroom wall. "I need to pick up Noah by 10:30. Ethan smiled at the name. "Your son?" "Yes." "Then I will not keep you late." She nodded. "All right." As he walked away, Claire noticed several classmates watching her differently. A woman named Rachel approached and quietly apologized for laughing at Vanessa's earlier comment. Claire thanked her. Another former classmate asked about Noah without making the question sound like an interrogation. Not everyone had been cruel. That mattered too. Claire found her assigned seat near the back of the ballroom and unfolded her napkin. For the first time that evening, she actually tasted the food in front of her. Halfway through dinner, Principal Harris announced the Working Parent Opportunity Scholarship again and explained that applications would open to working parents returning to college or professional certification programs. The program would help cover tuition, required books, approved childcare expenses, and emergency educational costs that often force adults to abandon their goals. Claire listened carefully. Years ago, before Noah was born, she had completed almost 2 years of business courses at a community college. She had never finished. Childcare became expensive. His father disappeared from their lives. Work became necessary. School became something she promised herself she would return to later. Later had quietly become 7 years. After dessert, Ethan found her near the coat check. "You were listening very carefully during the scholarship announcement," he said. Claire gave him a suspicious look. Were you watching me instead of your own presentation? Occupational weakness. I noticed things. She smiled despite herself. Ethan lowered his voice. Did you ever finish business school? Claire looked down at the claim ticket in her hand. No. Do you still want to? The question was so simple that it hurt. Nobody had asked her what she wanted in years. They asked what no one needed, when she could work, whether rent was paid, whether she had enough groceries. Claire took a slow breath. I think part of me does. Ethan nodded. No grand offer. No check. No promise to fix her life. Then maybe that part deserves to be heard. Before Claire could answer, Vanessa approached again, carrying her coat, and a very different expression from the one she had worn at the beginning of the night. Claire, she said softly, I owe you an apology. Vanessa stopped a few feet from Claire, and for once, there was no audience gathered around her. I owe you an apology, she repeated. Claire studied her face. The confidence was still there, but something underneath it had changed. Embarrassment, perhaps, or the uncomfortable realization that the person she had dismissed mattered to someone she desperately wanted to impress. For what part? Claire asked. Vanessa looked down at the coat draped over her arm. For the comments earlier. About your job. About being a single mother. I was trying to be funny. Were you? Vanessa winced. Ethan remained beside Claire, but said nothing. Claire appreciated the silence. This apology belonged to Vanessa, and deciding what to do with it belonged to her. I spent half the night acting like success has one definition, Vanessa said. And then Ethan told everyone what you did for him. Claire shook her head gently. You should not respect me because Ethan does. Vanessa looked up. I know. Claire waited. At least, I think I know now. That was more honest than Claire expected. She nodded once. Then thank you for saying it. Vanessa seemed surprised. That is it. An apology does not erase 10 years or 10 minutes. But I do not need to embarrass you back. Vanessa's eyes softened. You really have not changed. Claire gave a small smile. I have changed a lot. Vanessa left quietly, and Ethan watched her disappear into the ballroom. That was kinder than she expected. Kindness is not the same as pretending something did not happen. Ethan looked at Claire with an expression she remembered from high school, the one he wore when she said something he intended to think about later. You still do that? Do what? Say one sentence and make people reconsider their entire argument. Claire laughed. That sounds exhausting. I barely have enough energy to reconsider dinner. They walked toward the hotel lobby together. The music from the reunion softened behind them, replaced by the muted hum of elevators and the sound of rain beginning against the glass entrance. Claire checked her phone. 9:58. A message from her mother showed Noah asleep beneath a dinosaur blanket with one hand wrapped around a toy astronaut. Claire smiled. Ethan noticed. He looks happy. He is. She slipped the phone back into her purse. Most days, that feels like enough. And the other days? Claire looked through the glass at the wet street outside. The other days I wonder whether I gave up too much. Ethan did not rush to answer. School, he asked. School. Career. Maybe parts of myself I thought I would come back for later. Later is still available. Claire gave him a skeptical look. That sounds like something a billionaire says because tuition does not scare him. Ethan laughed softly. Fair criticism. Then his expression became serious. But the scholarship is not mine to give you. Claire turned toward him. What do you mean? There is an independent application committee. Income requirements, academic history, personal statement, the whole process. I cannot put your name at the top. Claire felt an unexpected relief. Good. Good. I do not want to be your charity project. Ethan nodded. I know. That is why I am telling you to apply instead of offering to solve it. Claire looked at him for a long moment. 10 years earlier, she had called $30 a loan because she understood his pride. Now he was returning the same courtesy. Not money. Choice. What if I do not get it? She asked. Then you will have asked the question instead of answering no for yourself. The rain streaked silver across the hotel windows. Claire thought about community college forms she had once kept in a kitchen drawer, then finally thrown away during a move. She thought about Noah seeing her study at the same table where he did homework. She thought about wanting something without apologizing for wanting it. Send me the application, she said. Ethan smiled. I already hoped you would say that. Claire narrowed her eyes. You were that confident? No. He opened the lobby door for her. I just remembered the girl who once refused to let me miss a bus because I was afraid of where it might take me. 3 weeks after the reunion, Claire sat at her kitchen table at 11:47 at night, staring at a blank application box that asked a question she had answered for everyone except herself. What do you hope to build with this opportunity? Noah slept down the hall, his backpack hanging from the same chair where Claire had helped him finish a spelling worksheet 2 hours earlier. Beside her laptop sat a stack of medical office schedules, bookkeeping receipts, and a mug of coffee that had gone cold sometime before 10. The application was not only about financial need. It also evaluated commitment, academic goals, and the applicant's ability to complete the program. She had requested 2 recommendation letters. None of that had been as difficult as writing about what she wanted. Her phone lit up with a message from Ethan. He had sent the scholarship link the morning after the reunion and had not asked about it since. Tonight his message was simple. Deadline is midnight. Claire looked at the clock. 13 minutes. She typed back. I know. His reply came almost immediately. Then stopped editing the first sentence. Claire stared at the screen. How did you know? Because you did the same thing with chemistry essays. Despite herself, she smiled. Then another message appeared. I am not on the selection committee. I cannot see your application. Whatever you submit belongs to you. Claire looked back at the question. What did she hope to build? For years, the answer had been stability. Enough rent. Enough groceries. Enough gasoline to make it through Friday. Enough time to pick Noah up before the after-school program charged another late fee. Wanting more had felt irresponsible. She placed her hands on the keyboard. I want to finish what I started before I became afraid that wanting something for myself meant taking something away from my son. She stopped. Read it once. Then kept writing. She wrote about business classes she had loved. About bookkeeping work she had taught herself to improve because clients trusted her with numbers. About raising Noah and learning that organization was not merely a skill on a resume when another person depended on you. She wrote about the strange mathematics of being a working parent, where time mattered as much as money. At 11:59, Claire pressed submit. The confirmation page appeared. She exhaled so hard she laughed. Her phone buzzed. Ethan again. Did you do it? Yes. Good. Go to sleep. Claire shook her head. Bossy billionaire. His response took several seconds. Former scholarship kid with strong opinions. For weeks past, Claire heard nothing. She told herself she had expected that. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon at the medical office, an email arrived while she was scanning insurance forms. She almost deleted it because the subject line looked too formal. Working Parent Opportunity Scholarship. Claire read the first sentence twice. She had been selected as one of 12 finalists. Her interview would be conducted by an independent panel the following Monday. She covered her mouth with one hand. Everything okay? Her coworker asked. Claire nodded, then laughed softly. I think so. That evening, Noah sat across from her at the kitchen table while she practiced answering interview questions. Why do you want to go back to school? He read from a printed sheet. Claire answered carefully about career growth and financial stability. Noah frowned. That sounds boring. It is an interview. Say the real answer. Claire smiled. What is the real answer? Noah shrugged. Because you want to. The simplicity of it caught her off guard. On Monday, Claire entered the foundation office wearing the same navy dress she had worn to the reunion, this time with different shoes borrowed from her mother. Ethan was nowhere in sight. That was exactly what he had promised. Claire sat before 3 strangers who knew her application but not her history with him. The final interviewer looked down at her file. Mrs. Bennett, you left college 7 years ago. Why should we believe this time will be different? Claire thought about Vanessa's voice at the reunion. You always had so much potential. She thought about Ethan's $30 bus ride. Then she thought about Noah telling her to say the real answer. Claire lifted her eyes. Because 7 years ago, I thought stopping meant I had failed. Now I know I was surviving. There is a difference. And I am ready to start again. Claire walked out of the foundation office with no idea whether she had impressed anyone. The interview had lasted 32 minutes. Nobody applauded. Nobody promised anything. The panel thanked her, shook her hand, and told her finalists would be notified within 2 weeks. Strangely, Claire appreciated the uncertainty. For once, nothing depended on Ethan knowing her name. She had sat in that room as herself, answered difficult questions, and left without asking anyone to make the outcome easier. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Morning lunches, medical office calls, bookkeeping after Noah went to sleep. On the 9th day, Claire was standing beside the office copier when her phone vibrated. She almost ignored it until she saw Westbridge Opportunity Foundation on the screen. Her hands became suddenly cold. She opened the email. Dear Claire Bennett, we are pleased to inform you that the Independent Selection Committee has chosen you as a recipient of this year's Working Parent Opportunity Scholarship. Claire stopped reading. The copier continued feeding pages into the tray beside her. Somewhere down the hall, a patient asked for directions. Normal life kept moving while something inside Claire became completely still. The Working Parent Opportunity Scholarship would cover tuition, required books, and a portion of approved childcare expenses while she completed her business degree. Not forever. Not everything. Enough. Enough to make returning possible without pretending bills did not exist. Her coworker found her standing beside the copier with tears in her eyes. Claire. Claire laughed softly and covered her mouth. I got it. That evening, she printed the letter and placed it beside Noah's dinner plate. He sounded out the first few lines, then looked up. Does this mean you get to go to school? It does. Like me? Claire smiled. A little harder than second grade, hopefully. Noah jumped from his chair and wrapped both arms around her. I knew you would get it. Claire held him close. You absolutely did not know. I did. How? He pulled back with complete seriousness. Because you always make me finish things. Claire laughed until the tears finally came. Her phone rang 20 minutes later. Ethan. She answered while loading dishes into the sink. Congratulations, he said. You knew already? The committee released the recipient list this afternoon. I found out after the decision was final. Claire leaned against the counter. So you really did stay out of it. I told you I would. Thank you. There was a pause. For staying out of it. For knowing that mattered. Ethan understood. You gave me that lesson first. 2 months later, Claire attended the Foundation's scholarship reception at Westbridge High School. It was smaller than the reunion, quieter, filled with students and working parents rather than people comparing resumes. Claire wore the same navy dress again. This time she did not think about the price. Noah sat beside her mother near the front. Vanessa was there as part of the alumni committee. When she saw Claire, she smiled without rushing over or attaching herself to the moment. Claire appreciated that too. Principal Harris stepped to the microphone and introduced the scholarship recipients one by one. When Claire's name was called, Noah clapped louder than anyone in the room. Claire walked onto the stage and accepted a simple certificate. Ethan stood several feet away, applauding with everyone else. He did not hand her an oversized check. He did not announce that he had changed her life. He simply looked proud. After the ceremony, Vanessa approached Claire near the exit. You look different, she said. Claire glanced down at her familiar dress. I am wearing exactly what I wore at the reunion. Vanessa shook her head. That is not what I meant. Claire understood. The difference was not the scholarship either. It was that she had stopped standing in rooms waiting for other people to decide whether her life counted as success. Claire smiled at Vanessa's words, but she did not need to ask what had changed. She felt it too. Months earlier, she had walked into the reunion measuring herself against everyone else in the room. Salaries, houses, marriages, job titles. The quiet list had been endless. Now she understood that comparison had been the wrong ruler all along. I think I finally stopped apologizing for the life I had to build, Claire said. Vanessa lowered her eyes for a moment. I wish I had understood that before I made you feel small. Claire considered the apology carefully. You cannot change that night. I know, but you can decide who you are after it. Vanessa looked up, surprised, then nodded. I am trying. Claire believed her. Not completely, not blindly, but enough to let the conversation end without bitterness. Across the room, Noah was showing Ethan a drawing he had made of his mother wearing a graduation cap nearly twice the size of her head. Ethan studied it with the seriousness of an investor reviewing a major proposal. Very realistic, he said. Noah pointed to a stick figure beside Claire. That is me. I recognized you immediately. And that is Grandma. Ethan nodded. Excellent detail. Noah looked at him suspiciously. You are not in it. Ethan glanced toward Claire. That seems fair. I did not earn a place in this picture. Claire heard him and felt something warm settle quietly in her chest. He never assumed access to her future simply because he had helped open one door. 3 months later, Claire began evening classes at the community college she had left 7 years earlier. Her schedule was still difficult. She worked at the medical office until 4, picked Noah up from after-school care, made dinner, then attended 2 classes each week while her mother watched him. On the first night, Claire sat in her car outside campus for almost 10 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel. She was older than many students, tired before class had even started, terrified that she had mistaken courage for practicality. Then her phone lit up. A photograph from Noah showed him holding a handwritten sign that said Go MOM. Beneath it was a message from Ethan. First days are supposed to feel uncomfortable. Go inside anyway. Claire laughed, locked the car, and went to class. She did not become successful overnight. There was no sudden promotion, no luxury apartment, no miraculous disappearance of bills. Progress came in ordinary pieces. A good grade on an accounting exam. A professor recommending her for an internship. Noah falling asleep beside her textbooks while waiting for her to finish studying. Ethan remained in her life carefully. Coffee sometimes. Lunch when their schedules allowed. Conversations that had nothing to do with scholarships or money. He met Noah slowly and respectfully, never presenting himself as someone there to repair what was missing. Almost a year after the reunion, Claire and Ethan returned to Westbridge High School for an event celebrating the first group of working parent scholarship recipients. Claire stood near the auditorium doors while new applicants entered carrying the same nervous expressions she once wore. One woman hesitated near the registration table, staring at the forms as if she might turn around. Claire walked over. First time here. The woman nodded. I almost did not come. Claire smiled. I know that feeling. She helped her find the correct room, then returned to Ethan. What? Claire asked when she caught him watching her. Nothing. That is clearly something. Ethan smiled. I was remembering $30 and a bus ticket. Claire looked toward the woman disappearing into the auditorium. Funny how small things travel. Ethan nodded. The good ones usually do. Noah ran toward them from the hallway, waving a program in the air. Claire took his hand. A year earlier, she had believed the most important person at a reunion was the billionaire everyone wanted to impress. Now she knew better. The real guest of honor in any life was not the person with the largest company, the loudest success, or the most impressive title. It was the person who remembered your worth before the world had a reason to notice it. And sometimes, if you were fortunate, that person eventually became you.